等一下时间开始的时候就可以开始了。
Okay. Mr. and Miss Speaker, the proposition attempts to say free will by clinging to two sinking ships, free will and compatibilism. First, they cite Benjamin Libet's free will, but logic tells us that the decision to veto an action is just as much as a biological process as the decision to start one. A veto is simply a secondary neuron inhibitory response triggered by prior conditioning or brain states. It is not a mystical intervention from a soul. Second, they offer compatibilism. This is a semantic trick. They argue that if we act on our motives, we are free. But where do these motives come from? If my motives are 100% shaped by my genes and environment, then I'm merely a free puppet whose strings are made of DNA. Acting on a predetermined motive is not free will. It is just a machine running its code. Biological abnormalities and brain structures prove that will is a physical byproduct, not an independent agent. As previously noted, damage to the prefrontal cortex can lead to involuntary impulsive behavior. Case studies in neural law show that tumors in specific brain regions can turn law-abiding citizens into criminals overnight. If a physical change in the brain can completely alter what we call moral choice, then the choice was never free to begin with. It was always dependent on the integrity of biological hardware. When the hardware breaks, the will disappears, proving that the will is a state to the physical brain. Rejecting free will creates a more humane and effective legal system focused on rehabilitation rather than retribution. It highlights the shift from retribution to rehabilitation when we treat criminals as biological machines with broken parts rather than evil souls or guilty minds. Then, we move toward treatment and social reintegration. The proposition's focus on mens rea, guilty mind, is an outdated concept that depends punishment for the sake of punishment. By accepting determinism, we start blaming and start fixing. The deterrence does not require free will. We punish to recalibrate the biological machine's future behavior, just as we fix a car that keeps veering off the road. Mr. and Ms. Speaker, the proposition's defense of free will is an emotional one, born from the fear of losing meaning, but the opposition embraces the truth. Science and law show that we are governed by causality. By letting go of the illusion of free will, we gain a more rational, scientific, and compassionate understanding of human nature. We must reject the motion. Okay, again, 还有3分钟。 I think if there's no point, that's the end of my proposition, my opposition here. Thank you.
哇，你等一下，等一下，
好，记录一下。
你先别走。
OK。
Okay. By treating humans as broken car to fix, aren't you stripping away human dignity and fundamental right to be treated as a moral agent responsible for one's actions?
Hold on. Yes, thank you for the point. Hold on for a second. Let me think about this point. For this point. Okay, so thank you for the point. However, we believe that there is no dignity in cruelty. To punish a person for a biological or environmental outcome they never choose is not respect. It is a fundamental injustice. True dignity comes from understanding the root causes of human suffering. By shifting from a retributive to a rehabilitative model, we treat individuals with the compassion they deserve, addressing their indeed as complex biological beings rather than discarding them in a cell based on the philosophical myth of choice that science has already debunked. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me? Wait a second. I'm ready. Madam speakers, judges, and my fellow debaters, the opposition today has tried to. Sorry. The opposition today has tried to paint a picture of a world where humans are nothing more than complex biological clock, ticking away according to a pre-written script of genetic and environment. They argue that because we can find a cause for an action, the choice must be an illusion. However, they fail to distinguish between influence and determination. Today, I will rebuild the proposition's case by addressing two main clashes. First, the clash between scientific determinism and rational agency. And second, the clash regarding moral responsibility and social coherence. The opposition heavily rely on the Lipitz experiment to claim the neurons fire before we decide. However, scientific explanations of how we act do not negate the freedom of why we act. As referred in our case and by philosopher Jordan Habermas, science focuses on causes, which is the physical firing of neurons, while human action involve reasons, which is moral or logical justification. Furthermore, even Lipitz himself noted the vital power, the conscious ability to stop an impulse. The opposition's logic is flawed because it assumes that for free will to exist, it must be supernatural or independent of the brain. We argue from a compatibilist view. Even if our brain processes information physically, the fact that we can weigh reasons and steer our biological ship, as mentioned in our materials, prove agency. To say a choice is an illusion because it has a biological process is like saying a book has no meaning because it is made of ink and pulp and paper. The mechanism does not erase the meaning. The opposition also claims that we are biological machines and thus not responsible for our crimes or virtues. If we accept the opposition's word, the entire fundamental of human society, law and ethic, collapse into absurdity. Our legal system relies on the concept of mens rea, which is guilty mind, and we punish a murder but not a falling rock because we recognize that the murderer had the capacity to choose. Otherwise, as Isaiah Burding argues, freedom requires real alternatives. The opposition suggests that punishment is just mechanical corrections, but this ignores the human experience of regret, praise, and blame. If there is no free will, then a student working hard for an exam is no different from a tree growing leaves. They are both just happening. But we know this is not true. We hold people accountable because we know that human beings have the unique capacity to reflect on their impulses and change their courses of action. By denying free will, the opposition denies the very essence of what makes us human. Madam Speakers, the opposition lives in a world of script and shadows. And we don't agree to describe humans as a machine because we can make the decision, even follow the Lewis experiment. Still, it is the human to make the decision after we collect the info. We collect the neuron. We collect. We know the outcome of the neuron brings to us. We have the free will, which and also the best experiment cannot explain when people want to make complex decisions. Still haven't been proved the neuron impulse is the only mechanism to move our mind. So they see the ink but ignore the story. We, the proportions, stand with the reality of human experience, history, genes. We acknowledge our biological roots, but we celebrate our rational wings because we can weigh reasons, because we can veto impulses, and because we hold each other accountable. We must conclude that free will is a functional and undeniable reality. I beg you to propose.
Okay. Okay.
Ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm good. Okay. Mr. and Ms. Speaker, the propositions case study today presents on a beautiful yet fragile human sentiment, the feeling of being in control. They have spent their time defending a world of reasons and moral wins, but they have failed to address the cold, hard reality of causality. They cling to the ghost in the machine because they are terrified of what happens if we admit the machine is all there is. In this speech, I will provide a final deconstruction of the propositions narrative through three major clashes. First, the neurobiological illusion. Second, the semantic trap of compatibilism. And the third, the ethical revolution beyond retribution. Before moving to the clashes, let us address the proposition's primary defenses. On Habermas, the proposition cites Jürgen Habermas claiming a distinction between reasons and causes. This is a semantic state of head. Just because we give a biological impulse a fancy name like a reason, it doesn't stop being a biological impulse. A reason is simply how our conscious brain narrates a decision that has already been made by our unconscious neurons. On mens rea, they argue that because law recognizes intent, free will must exist. This is circular reasoning. Law assumes free will to justify punishment. It doesn't prove it exists. Our legal system is a social contract based on a biological myth. On free will, they claim we have a veto power, but science shows that the decision to veto an impulse is itself preceded by readiness potential. The fatal is just another domino in the chain, not a break in it. The proposition argues that because we can weigh reasons, we are free. However, what they call reasoning is simply the final output of a deterministic biological process. As Robert Sapolsky argues in Determined, our decisions are shaped by factors from seconds to centuries before the act. From the cortisol levels in your blood this morning to the prenatal environment in your mother's womb to the evolutionary pressures that shape your frontal cortex. When you choose a salad over a burger, you are not exercising a mystical soul. You are witnessing the victory of a specific neural pathway shaped by years of conditioning and genetic predisposition. The proposition is mistaking the complexity of the biological machine for freedom from that machine. A complex computer program is still a program. It does not become free just because its code is too difficult for the proposition to read. The proposition attempts to hide behind compatibilism, claiming free will can coexist with determinism. This is what Immanuel Kant famously called a wretched subterfuge. Compatibilism is nothing more than a semantic game. They say you are free if you act according to your motives. But as we have proven, those motives are not yours to choose. If you are a puppet who loves your strings, are you truly free? No. By redefining free will as acting without external coercion, the proposition ignores internal determination. If I'm forced by my own biology, my childhood trauma, or my neurochemistry to want something, I'm still not the ultimate author of my actions. The proposition stance is logically inconsistent. They admit the brain is a physical system governed by physics, yet claim somehow magically escapes those laws when it's time to make a choice. The proposition's most emotional argument is that society will collapse without the mystical concept of free will. This is a consequentialist fallacy. Just because the truth is uncomfortable does not make it a lie. Furthermore, they claim we strip away dignity. We argue the opposite. There is no dignity in the system that punishes a man for being born into poverty and having a brain shaped by trauma. We don't blame a broken car for crashing, yet we still take it off the road to protect others. This is our model, quarantine without retribution. By accepting determinism, we move away from vengeance and toward prevention. We look at the systematic causes, the poisoning, lack of education, or brain tumors, and we fix them. The proposition's moral responsibility is just a fancy word for the lizard brain desire for revenge. Our word is more compassionate because it seeks to heal a machine, not whip the ghost. Mr. and Miss Speaker, the proposition has given you a story of ghosts in the machine. They want you to believe that humans are exceptional, standing outside the laws of humans. We have given you the machine itself. We have shown that from the Libet experiment to the causal chains of Sapolsky, there is no self that stands outside of nature. the will is not free. It is a final link in the chain that stretches back to the beginning of time. Denying that doesn't make us more human. It only makes us more ignorant. For the sake of scientific truth, for a legal system based on healing, and for a more rational society, the opposition must win. I beg you to uphold. Thank you, Mr. and Miss Speaker. 4 minutes.
Madam Speakers, honorable judges, at the end of this debate, we are left with two distinct words. The proposition's word is a comforting fairy tale, where feelings free is seen as being free. It is a world of ghosts in the machine. But the opposition offer you the world as it actually is, a world of biological reality, where every action has a cause and every choice is the inevitable result of a complex chain of events. The proposition's case rests entirely on intuition. It claims that because we weigh reasons, we must be free. However, we have shown through the lab experiment evidence that the brain's readiness potential occurs before conscious awareness. The choice is just a post hoc notification sent to our conscious mind. As Robert Spassky argues, you cannot escape your neuron, your hormones, or your history. The propositions has failed to provide a single mechanism that allows a soul or self to override the laws of physics. The propositions warns that without free will, society will collapse into chaos. This is a false fallacy of consequence. We can create a more rational society than the proposition often.
4 minutes.
OK，好，
You
换言
can
瑞。
start. 哎，只有2分钟吗？
对，
OK，
言瑞，
好，等一下啊，
好了吗？
等一下。
哎，你有看吗？你是正方同学。
有，等我在找我的总结的那个稿在哪里？
正方总结。
哦，好，找到了。
好了，开始哦。
Madam Speaker, at the end of this debate, we are left with two starkly different worlds. The opposition offers a cold, mechanical world where humans are mere biological clocks, and every act of love or sacrifice is just a chemical reaction. The proposition, however, has defended a world of agency, where reasons matter and individuals are the masters of their own fate. Today, this debate boils down to two main clashes. The first clash is about how we define choice. The opposition claim is that neuroscience proves we are determined by brain activity. However, we have shown that this is a category error. As we cited from Georgian Habermas, science focuses on causes, while human action is driven by reasons. Even if my brain shows activity before I speak, that activity is the mechanism of my choice, not a negation of it. By confusing the how with the why, the opposition fails to see that as rational agents, we can override biological impulses through reflection. We are not just the biological machines. The opposition claims we are the pilots of those machines. The second clash concerns the impact on society. The opposition argued that determinism leads to a more compassionate justice system. We find this logic dangerous. Free will is the essential foundation for any coherent legal and moral system. We brought forward the legal concept of mens rea. Our entire justice system distinguishes between an accident and a 这么少吗？
是这么少。请问要总结还要再各讲一遍吗？都要减少时间。
可是你给的那个总结2分钟念不完。
要3段。
4分钟啊，总结是
4
4分钟是对的。
好，那我们总结再重新来一次。来，好，见。
所以妹妹，所以
刚才
你那个是可以讲到4分钟吗？
对。那我刚刚设错。
我想OK，对你刚刚设成2分钟，我以为你是想说你的稿子够2分钟。
那我就重来哦。我们2个都重来吗？
应该吧，对啊。
OK， 好。
谁先？我先吗？
我先。Madam Speaker, honorable judges, at the end of this debate, we are left with 2 distinct words. The proposition's word is a comforting fairy tale, where feeling free is the same as being free. It is a world of ghosts in the machine. But the opposition offer you the world as it actually is, a world of biological reality where every action has a cause and every choice is the inevitable result of a complex chain of events. The proposition's case rests entirely on intuition. They claim that because we weigh reasons, we must be free. However, we have shown through the Lewis experiment that the brain's readiness potential occurs before the conscious awareness. The choice is just a post hoc notification sent to our conscious mind. As Robert Spassky argues, you cannot escape your narratives, your hormones, or your history. The proposition has failed to provide a single mechanism that allows a soul or self to override the law of physics. The propositions warned that without free will, society will collapse into chaos. This is a fallacy of consequences. Just because a truth is uncomfortable doesn't mean it's false. More importantly, we have shown that a deterministic view leads to a more compassionate justice system. Instead of empty moral blame, we focus on preventing and rehabilitation. We don't hate a broken car. We fix the engine. By understanding the causes of crime, poverty, brain trauma, or environment, we create a more rational society than the one proposition offers, which is based on ancient, unscientific retribution. Madam Speaker, the proposition has given you a story, and we given you science. We have given you a feeling. They have given you a feeling, and we have given you the facts. If we are to move forward as a species, we must stop pretending we are outside of nature. We human beings must accept that we are the final link in a causal chain that stretched back to a Big Bang. For the sake of scientific honesty and more understanding society, I beg you to oppose. Thank you. Oh, 换人。哦，我就开始喽。
Madam Speaker, at the end of this debate, we are left with two starkly different worlds. The opposition offers a cold, mechanical world where humans are mere biological clocks, and every act of love or sacrifice is just a chemical reaction. The proposition, however, has demanded a world of agency, where reasons matter and individuals are the masters of their own fate. Today, this debate boils down to two main clashes. The first clash is about how we define choice. The opposition's claim is that neuro- neuroscience proves we are determined by brain activity. However, we have shown that this is a category error. As we cited from Jordan Habermas, science focuses on causes, while human action is driven by reasons. Even if my brain shows activity before I speak, the activity is the mechanism of my choice, not a negation of it. By confusing the how with the why, the opposition fails to see as rational agents. We can override biological impulses through reflection. We are not just the biological machines the opposition claims. We are the pilots of those machines. The second clash concerns the impact on society. The opposition argues that determinism leads to a more compassionate justice system. We find this logic dangerous. Free will is the essential foundation for any coherent legal and moral system. We both for the legal concept of man's will. Our entire justice system distinguishes between an accident and a premeditated crime. This distinction only exists because we acknowledge that individuals have the capacity to choose otherwise. Accepts the opposition's view. We treat criminals like broken cars to be fixed, stripping them of their human dignity and moral agency. A society without free will is not more compassionate. It is a society where human intent no longer matters. In summary, Madam Speaker, the opposition's case rests on the idea that because we can see the physical part of a human, the whole person doesn't exist. But we have proven that being human means being more than the sum of our atoms. Because we can weigh reasons, because we hold each other accountable, and because we can imagine a future different from our past, we must conclude that free will is a reality for the sake of human dignity and reason. I beg you to follow the proposition. 结束。